And I remember this one Sunday, he brought me into the gym and he said, and then at the time I'm 10, 11 years old.
Right.
And he said, I want you to go up to the top of the bleachers. I want you to sit down and I want you to think about what you have to do today out there on the football field. And so I sat there, envisioned myself in the game.
Right.
And then I'd actually go out there and perform and do well.
Okay.
And so what I did, what I learned from that is envisioning myself in the next phase of my life.
This is a journey.
Let me take you on a journey.
There will still be
The journey. The journey.
New sheriff in town, and his name is
The journey.
Journey.
This thing is bigger than Nino Brown. This is
The journey. The journey.
What is it that moved you?
The journey. The journey. The journey. The journey.
The Journey Memphis is being generously supported by Nike's Black Community Commitment and Methodist Labanner Healthcare. Welcome back to another episode of The Journey. I'm your host, Larry Robinson, and today we have a true Memphis icon. Not that the other ones haven't been true, but this one's a little special for me because of what this person has done for Larry Robinson being a transplant. So before we get there, we got to go to our quote. And our quote today is from the great Carter G. Woodson from The Miseducation of the Negro. And it goes a little something like this. No man knows what he can do until he tries. I think that's self-explanatory. You got to make an effort because you truly don't know what you can do until you put the effort out and do something. So without further ado, we have a Memphis-born, Memphis-bred brother, third-generation real estate professional, father, husband, and most of all, an amazing son. Without further ado, we're going to have my brother, Darrell Cobbins. What's up, Darrell?
What's going on?
How you doing, man?
I'm glad to be here.
Cool.
Finally made it.
Hell, we finally made it, but hey, when business calls, business
That's
calls.
good. Yeah, I appreciate the opportunity.
Cool. So first we're going to start out. We're going to start in the early years. Young Darrell.
Yeah.
Young Darrell.
Yeah.
Young Darrell, like 4 or 5-year-old
Wow.
Darrell. Tell me about him. Tell me what
Wow.
neighborhood you were raised and what was going on during that time.
Initially, we lived in a neighborhood called Indian Hills, which is southwest Memphis before you get to Westwood, that area.
Okay.
Me, my mother, and my brother, Darrell.
Okay.
And it was your sort of traditional kind of African American suburb.
Okay.
Outside the core of the city with families around.
Okay.
We lived about maybe 5-10 minute drive from my grandparents who were nearby.
Hold on. I didn't hear you mention Pops. Was your dad there?
Yeah. Well, my parents divorced when I was 2.
Okay.
And we didn't reconnect with him until I was 15. But during that time,
13 years later?
Yeah. My mom was a single mom, had a lot of support from her family to help raise us and provide for us. But she was shouldering the load, man.
Okay. Who outside of your parents had the biggest impact on young Darrell?
Grandparents.
Really?
Yeah. They, when we were coming of age, they were becoming empty nesters.
Right.
And then here we come, ultimately moving in with them, all 3 of us, and they had to help raise us all over again.
So I take this as maternal grandparents.
Maternal grandparents, that's
okay.
right.
What
that's
about
right.
fraternal grandparents?
We didn't have contact with that side of the family for that 13-year period.
Wow.
From 2 to 15, yeah. Oh. Yeah, it was always a little odd. There were times when kids would ask, where's your father? What does he do? Mm-hmm. And I would make up stories. I would say he lives out of town or come up with some reason to get off the subject. But, in spite of that, we had great family male role models on my mother's side with my grandfather and my mother's 2 brothers who were instrumental in helping raise us too. It was a family affair with us.
There's always a favorite uncle. What was up with the favorite?
It was
uncle?
only 2, so but my uncle Moses, Moses Peace, he was an actor, worked at Channel 3 for about 20 or so years, and he was both enforcer.
Okay.
If you've never been awakened with a whooping
out
of your sleep, I can give you some guidance on that. But he was trying to make us men and make us strong. Right. And, he would take us to, when he was directing plays or doing a production, he would take us and let us hang out with him and the cast and cast parties after the show and that kind of thing. So
he was favorite uncle.
Yeah, he was great. He still is great.
What decision did you make as a young person that ended up having a lifelong implications, even though you didn't know then, of course you didn't as a young person, but is there a decision that you made back then that you like, dang, I'm glad I made that decision?
Well, it was something that I was taught.
Okay.
That I utilized and still utilize to this day.
Okay.
My very first football coach named Steve Childress would pick us up on Sundays. We always had games after church on Sundays. And take us to the school, and we would be there maybe 2 or 3 hours before the game. And I remember this one Sunday, he brought me into the gym, and he said, and then at the time I'm 10, 11 years old.
Right.
And he said, I want you to go up to the top of the bleachers. I want you to sit down, and I want you to think about what you have to do today out there on the football field. And so I sat there, envisioned myself in the game.
Right.
And then I'd actually go out there and perform and do well.
Okay.
And so what I did, what I learned from that is envisioning myself in the next phase of my life. So when I was in, elementary school, I would visualize what must middle school be like and see myself navigating in that space. Okay. Same with college, same with high school, same in college, I was imagining myself in a professional life.
Okay.
And so what I learned reading many years later is that Serena Williams, Tiger Woods, one of their methods for performance is seeing themselves in the game and imagining themselves performing.
Yeah.
And I was reading that and thinking, Coach Childress had me doing that at 11 years old. And so, that's something that I learned and that just sort of became intuitive. And it's, a way of sort of life mapping and goal mapping, but in your subconscious in a lot of ways.
Right. Now, you're third generation real estate professional.
Yes, sir.
As a young person, who did you dream you were going to be?
As a young person, I remember in preschool, 4 years old, they showed us a film on the reels that you had to attach to the, projector thing. So this is like 76, 77.
Okay. All right.
They showed us a film about Martin Luther King and the Civil Rights Movement.
Okay.
And I remember going home that day and telling my mom I learned about Martin Luther King today. And so I've always admired Dr. King and his love for us as a people, his sacrifice, and I've always admired people of that ilk. And so locally, I went to church, the same church growing up as Maxine Smith and her husband Vasco. Judge H.T. Lockhart, who was legendary in the legal field. Jesse Turner Sr., who was with Tri-State Bank. And so I always watched those people and admired them and wanted to one day be like them. Where they had careers and professions, but they were also known for their service and dedication to especially making things better for the African American community.
Right. Wow. Okay. So every brother has that moment in their life when they realize that they're a brother. I wonder if you will share with us that moment when you realized that you was a black man.
Well, I'll tell you,
Hold on for a quick second.
Okay.
Listen, we're going to come back on the journey. And Brother Darrell's going to share with us when he realized he was a brother. Stay right there. This is The Journey on the Kazukian Network. Be back in a second.
This is a journey.
Let me take you on a journey.
Success in life is not a straight line. There are twists and turns in everyone's life, and the more you know about their story, the more you'll understand the process. Kazukian Media Group proudly presents The Journey, a show that features successful black men in Memphis telling their stories of their lives and the ups and downs they've encountered on their ultimate road to success. We believe the journey will encourage young men and help them see that life is a journey. Watch The Journey, hosted by me, Larry Robinson. Brought to you by the Kazukia Media Group in partnership with the Delta Boulay. Welcome back to The Journey. I'm your host, Larry Robinson. Today we have Brother Darrell Cobbins. Now, I gotta be a little transparent here. He talked about in the first segment how he modeled himself after some of those great people that have come in Memphis, that have been Memphians, great Memphians that were great speakers. And I've always thought that Darrell was an amazing speaker. And I could see him. I used to really envision him as a potential mayor for the city. I just wanted to share that with you. So, with that being said, Darrell, when did you realize you were a black man?
Well, I first realized that I was a black boy.
Okay.
The school that my mom sent my brother and I to for a number of our formative education years was a black Catholic school called Father Bertrand.
Okay.
In South Memphis. And every day when we said the Pledge of Allegiance to the American flag, right next to it was the Afro-American flag, red, black, and green flag.
Okay.
And we would say the Pledge of Allegiance to the Afro-American flag right after we said the Pledge of Allegiance to the American flag.
Oh.
And that pledge said, I pledge allegiance to the destiny of black people, to the red, the black, and the green. I give my life and my love to my people. I promise to keep an open mind to all people, to seek the goals of brotherhood, to stand up for what is right, from now until Judgment Day. Right on. And we said that every day. Every class in the whole school. And so that was at 6 years old that I learned that. And so Blackness has been a core, and dedication to Blackness has been a core principle that was instilled in me at a very young age.
I appreciate the administrators at Father Bertrand because, wow, I can't imagine what impact that has on your psyche as you're growing up. Mm-hmm. So we're gonna go back. We're gonna go back to your early childhood. It was you and Darrell.
Yep.
Riding high.
That's right.
Strong.
Right. I'm envisioning right now.
Okay. Tell us that moment. Tell us that moment that you went across your mind that what were y'all doing? Riding bikes, playing kickball. What were y'all doing that was one of your fondest memories during that time?
So we caught matter to school.
Okay.
From the time we were let's just say I was maybe 10 or 11, he was 12 or 13.
Okay.
All the way through high school. Okay. And so we have ridden buses in every corner of the city of Memphis to the point where we literally at one time could tell you how to get anywhere in Memphis on any bus that was going anywhere. So we'd be like, okay, you need to get on the 4 Walker Chelsea. That'll take you downtown. Then you can transfer
they need to put
to
you on the board at Matter then.
I don't need any more boards. But just us just kind of navigating life together, Okay. I remember one time we were at school at Father Bertrand and they let us out because it started snowing. And we had to catch the bus home.
Oh, man.
In the snow.
Okay.
So we go to our usual bus stop. We standing there for like an hour and we know where we need to go to transfer to get home.
Right.
So I said, man, let's just start walking that way. And that way was probably 5 miles.
Okay.
So we trekking it in the snow. And we ultimately get home, it ends up being like a 4 or 5 hour process. But just those kind of memories of, early life where you sort of becoming, your boys transitioning, becoming men.
Right.
Those early years were really seminal in terms of our bonding because we were together every day.
Every day.
Every night. Of course, when he became a teenager, he started working and doing things. I was playing sports, so we weren't together as much. But the early years, it was just, And we were the only grandchildren on my mom's side of the family. So
Okay.
we were almost like, you know how they have these names now for these celebrity couples, Brad and Jennifer, they call them Benifer or something.
Right.
Darrell and Darrell, or the boys.
Okay.
That's who we were,
Yeah, it
you
was
know,
your
for the
moniker, was
family.
the
We were,
boys.
you know, we were nurtured and provided so much love and exposure, from church to the arts to politics. You know, we were being dragged somewhere everywhere as kids. But when you grow up and become a young man, you begin to realize how important that was in shaping your worldview and what you believe and what you want to do in life.
So you went from Father Bertrand to MUS.
Yep.
What was that like? What was the transition from going to where you said the Black Pledge of
Right,
Allegiance
right.
to where you was probably looking around and they had too
Man.
many brothers around?
Absolutely. Well, Darrell was there 2 years before me.
Okay.
So I kind of knew what to expect.
Okay.
But I'll tell you, even with that, there were a couple of seminal moments when I first got there that helped me realize, okay, you're in a completely different world now.
Right.
One was a group of us, it was an all boys school, so a group of us were sitting around during a free period in the student lounge and just talking about the presidential election that was coming up. And this was Bush versus Dukakis. And so we all went around the table and said who we were for, and everybody was for Bush except for me. And I was like, okay, bam, you know,
Right.
you're not in Kansas anymore.
Right.
The other thing that was an epiphany was when it came time for spring break,
Oh yeah.
and everybody was saying where they were going. Vail, Colorado, Destin, Florida, you know, all these places of
Right.
retreat.
Right.
And they asked me where I was going. And I said, well, I'm going to be watching One Life to Live with my grandmama at the house. But that was, you know, it was an eye-opener to say, okay, you know, you're in a different environment now, and
Right.
you need to recognize that. And not that you shudder or diminish yourself in any way, but just knowing that you're in a different socioeconomic bubble
Right.
that is very different from, you know, what I grew up in, where there everybody got a car at 15 years old.
Right, right.
We still catching the bus.
Right.
But you know, understanding that sort of instilled in us, I think, a drive to ultimately one day be successful. And the confidence building thing and all of that was that in spite of those differences, you know, we were competing academically on par with folks who had tremendously more advantages and comforts than we did,
Right.
which I think is a good understanding to have early in life, is that you can compete with the best of them and not have to, you know, take a step back in any way, shape, or form.
You talk about your brother Darnell. He kind of laid the groundwork for you because you were 2 years behind him. Take me back to when he was sick and you had to deal with that.
Whew, yeah. So my birthday's November 7th. We gathered at a little restaurant, me, him, his kids, and my mom and my family, and had a little birthday dinner and had a great time. And about a week later, he called me and told me that he had, you know, contracted the coronavirus. And so, you know, I immediately, you know, rushed to Walgreens to get him all the stuff that they say you're supposed to have.
Right.
Took it out to him at his place. And at that time, it was so early that we couldn't be in contact.
Right.
But, you know, just checking on him every day and just making sure he was okay. And so one day he had shortness of breath and went out to Baptist East. And so I rushed out there. And as I got out there, they were taking him to the back because his oxygen levels were low. And that was the last time I saw him in person, you know, on that day. From there on, it was, you know, phone calls and all of that. And so he was in the hospital for probably about 2 weeks. Started off fine. I remember taking him Thanksgiving dinner out there and leaving it for him. And he was expecting to be out, within the next week or so.
Right.
And then just one day, everything started taking, a turn for the worse. And he was put on a ventilator. And I would say maybe after about 4 or 5 days of that, he transitioned. But, one of the things that was tough is that you feel so helpless in that type of situation because you can't be in there with them.
Right.
And so one day I was at home and I was like, man, I can't just sit here flipping through channels and my brother is out there fighting for his life.
Right.
So I decided every night that I would go out there and just, kneel on the grounds and pray for him.
Right.
Because I know that's what he would be doing for me.
Right.
And so I did that, probably for about a week, every evening. And, one thing I would say for anybody that's not married, which he wasn't at the time, we had to go to a probate attorney to be able to get to his bank account, to get to pay his bills, and those kind of things. And so if you can have a living will or anything that, or power of attorney for a family member or something like that, because that was, in addition to dealing with his illness, having to go through all of that process was really difficult. And so, one Friday morning, we would get calls every morning from the medical folks. And one Friday morning, they would call my mother, but this particular Friday morning, they called me.
Right.
And I was like, why'd they call me and not call mama, you know? So I just, shrugged it off. They gave me a report, said he's holding on, he's stable. And so then I sat down to do some work, and about maybe an hour later, this woman, what do they call them? Pulmonary specialist called and said that they were in the process of giving him CPR and that she would call me back and let me know. And so she called me back, and I've never told anybody this. She was asking me for permission to let him go.
Oh, man.
And I just sat there in disbelief for about 60 seconds.
Right. Because
I never imagined that.
Right.
I never imagined that. And so ultimately, I said, well, we want y'all to do whatever you can to keep him here.
Right.
And she said, well, the only thing that's keeping him here is what we're doing now.
Right.
Absent that, And so I had to acquiesce and agree.
That's got to be the worst day of your life.
Yeah.
Let me switch a little bit. You're a father and you're a husband. How did you maintain those roles in the midst of your pain of losing your brother?
I don't know, honestly.
Really?
I was just taking it one day at a time and trying to support my mom, his kids, and do, what needed to be done. And, I have to give it up to my wife because she was Mickey, she was extremely supportive and encouraging and consoling through all of that. And from a work standpoint, my number 2, Brandon Ingram, he said, don't worry about this. I got work.
Got it.
You deal with family. And so that was helpful to be able to, focus on family.
Support.
But in that kind of situation, you're just taking it one day at a time and dealing with the issues of that day.
I can't even imagine.
And trying to get some sleep to deal with the issues of tomorrow.
Right. Right.
But the day that he passed, they let us come out to see him. And on the way home, I stopped and got a bottle of Merlot, went out on my back deck, and just talked to him. And I will tell you, that night was the first night that I actually slept in true sleep.
Right.
In probably 3 or 4 months. But what I realized through everything that I just told you was that them calling me that morning was not coincidence. My mama didn't need to get that call.
Right.
You know, and I would not have wanted her to get that call.
Right.
And so that call came to me by whatever chance. And I remember calling mama and she wouldn't answer the phone, you know, and I knew she was asleep. And I said, okay, well, maybe God is giving her some rest, giving this to me to handle.
Right.
So that she doesn't have to handle it.
Right.
And, you know, in all of that, you see, you know, divine intervention or guidance in that process. And in the days after, you know, I remember you brought me a token of support out to the house, which I appreciated.
Absolutely.
And, you know, the most interesting thing to me was when he did pass, it was on the news, it was in the newspapers, it was exploding on social media. And I was like, he has to see this and be like, wow, you know,
So much
you know,
love.
all these folks thought this about me, appreciated me, and loved
He's a good
me.
brother, man.
Yeah,
He's a
so,
real good brother.
So, you know, it was a blessing to have been his little brother, and I try to continue forward and lift his name up every chance I get.
How are you today? What's different about Darrell today after experiencing that kind of loss?
Oh yeah. Well, you know, outside of my family, yeah, I don't mean this in a disrespectful way, but I really don't give a lot of care or credence to, you know, criticisms or judgments or those kind of things. As long as my family loves me and I love my family, everything else can be all right. I do believe in not taking any day for granted.
Oh, yeah.
You know, I was just watching you all's production of the interview with Floyd for this program.
Right.
And, you know, just underscored for me, take no day for granted, appreciate every day.
Right.
And try to, and one of the things he talked about in his interview was try to let people know that you passed through here and that you were here. And so those are the things that are really most important to me today is family, friends, leaving a mark, leaving a legacy, and everything else can be secondary.
I want to take you back again, but this time I want you to be you. And you're going back to that kid who might have been sitting there with Darrell on the other side of the table. Y'all watching cartoons on Saturday morning. If you got a chance to talk to that kid, what would you say to him?
I would tell him, you know, have supreme confidence in yourself and that you have the love, support, intellect, capability, and guidance to accomplish anything that you want to. You know, I was a shy kid growing up. Darrell was the extrovert. I mean, I was quiet, man.
Really?
Super, super quiet.
I don't believe it.
I swear. And people used to say, I thought you were mean because I didn't talk a lot. I'm like, why would people just assume I'm mean?
Right.
But I just wasn't, you know, a talkative, outgoing person. And to this day, I still have to turn on my extrovert.
Right.
But I didn't have a lot of confidence because at that time, you know, my mom struggled a lot growing up. Had to have a lot of support from her parents and brothers and sisters, and didn't have my father in my life. And so, you know, I was seeing the opposite in friends, families, and other things, and what you would consider normal growing up.
Right.
And so in some ways that for a young person, it diminishes your confidence and belief in what's possible and what you're capable of. But thankfully, every step along the way, especially in school and through sports, I developed, a tremendous amount of confidence and belief in myself that has only been, sort of gradually increasing, as I've gone through life. So,
When did you know you were going to be okay? When did you say, I got this, I can do this?
when I graduated from college,
Okay.
when I graduated from Rhodes, I already had a job,
Okay.
thankfully, and I felt like now I have the credentials and the seal of approval, so to speak,
Right.
where I can go out here and take on the world. And I don't necessarily need mama for that. I don't necessarily need daddy for that. And I was living on my own with a fraternity brother at the time, so I was feeling like, okay, it's time to be grown now.
Right.
And so for me, at that point, there was no looking back. I was viewing the world as my oyster to go out and be conquered.
He said fraternity brother. I want y'all to know he's a That's
right. That's right.
Incorporated.
That's right.
So, my frat brother. So you put some respect on his name. So last thing, and I want you to leave the young people that are seeing this or hearing this. I want you to leave them with a Cobbinism that they can take with them and say, I remember that brother. And I want you to say it in that camera right there.
Okay. Dr. Martin Luther King said that the ultimate measure of a person is not where they stand during times of comfort and convenience, but where they stand during times of challenge and controversy. And so in your life, there will always be times of challenge. There may be some controversy, there may be some peril and some loss. But the ultimate measure of you as a person will be how you handle that and how you traverse that terrain, which may not be just in one instance. There may be multiple instances. And so what I want you to do is do like I did and like I learned when I was young, is to imagine yourself in the next phase of your life at whatever point you are. And when you get to that phase, imagine yourself at the next phase. Because what that will do during those challenging times is allow you to have a vision and have some hope that tomorrow can be better than today. And so that's what I want to leave you with. We as your community, we love you, we believe in you, and we're here to help you succeed in every facet of your life.
No man knows what he can do until he tries, even in times of challenge and inconvenience. So listen, I'm Larry Robinson for my brother Darrell Cobbins. Thank you, sir.
Appreciate
you.
Thank you.
You've been watching The Journey. I told you we're going to keep bringing these heavy hitters right here to you. Till the next time, take care. Thank you to our partners at Nike's Black Community Commitment and Methodist Labanner Healthcare. To hear more incredible stories like this, be sure to download the Kazukian app from the App Store or Google Play, or check out the Journey Memphis podcast on all your major podcast providers. Also, check us out on the Kazukian Network.